Rec Yard, women's prison podcast, where we are live on the Rec Yard every Wednesday night. Hey, it's rec time. We are on the Rec Yard Women's Prison podcast. I'm Marci Marie.
I'm Toonchi.
Toonchi, you sound like hell.
Honey, I've slept all day. I slept all day. I got up, set a timer, set an alarm so I wouldn't
Miss
wouldn't
Rec.
miss rec because we come out sick, rain, sleet, snow.
We sure did. You remember when we would have a message from somebody telling us to go to rec from another dorm. Now, you were on a unit where y'all wrecked in the same area. I was on a unit. Now, Brittany was 5 rec yards away from me, and
God.
she would send me a message, go to rec. And it didn't matter what I had going on. If they opened those rec doors, I had to be out there. And she would be so far away from me, just signing these big old hearts in the air. I could just see my sweet little wife on the other end of the compound. But I made it to rec no matter. And you're right. If you're sick, you still show up, especially if you get that message. And that's kind of what we're talking about tonight is community, right? Building community, finding community behind bars, finding community in the strangest places, like prison.
And we wouldn't have survived without it. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I see AIC's advocate. Good evening, everyone. He says, welcome to On the Rec Yard with Marci and Toonchi. He's such an all-star. Please like and share the live so that more people can hear about what's happening inside of Texas prisons. Appreciate that reminder. Tap your screen if you're watching on your phone or send those comments. Yeah, tap it away. And if you're listening, if you're not with us live right now and you're listening wherever you hear your favorite podcast, please do um, write a review so that even more people can hear our show. We would appreciate that so much. And this is our favorite night of the week. And I see y'all in the chat coming in hot already. And Carrie S., I just saw your Facebook post, Carrie, and it was so sweet. Carrie's had a comedic day, she said on Facebook, lots of mishaps. And she also gave a shout out to the show on the Rec Yard, and we appreciate you so much. I see my daughter Niala in the chat, and she said, "Hey, did they sign to each other on the Rec Yard at Mountain View?" No, Niala.
Of course.
Yep.
Yes.
On the
Look,
Rec Yard?
let me tell you, the rec yard was in the corner, and catty corner from that was cell block, and then H dorm was here. So people would go to this side of the fence to sign to H dorm, and then that side to sign to cell block.
But you didn't have to sign to other rec yards because they were all on one rec yard, Niala. The whole unit. They weren't. It wasn't like Lane Murray where every dorm had their individual rec yard. We showered, ate, went to school with, and went to rec with the same group of people that we lived with. And yeah, Audrey Lee, I'll tell you, Toonch had a little bit too much fun this past weekend. I'm sure she's going to tell you a little bit about it. Girl, you better stop. You're just coughing away. I'm so sorry.
Just sweating.
She caught something. She was in a crowd and she caught a little something, and she's not COVID, so we're happy about that. So, yeah, we could do this real quick. Let's do a weekly recap. Listen, you want to know how many times I practiced recording that little hey Toonchi?
How many? Lots of times, huh?
Yeah, so tell us about your week and your weekend.
Well, after we talked with Alicia last rec yard, we had a board meeting for the youth prison system. And several of us went to go make comments. Marci, it was terrible. Never felt so invalidated and dismissed in all my advocacy work. the board chair, who I have met before and talked to, he heard our comments and then said thank you for sharing them. Essentially, there's things in the report, the DOJ report, that I don't believe are accurate. And I just got up. I just got up and said, nope, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. Nope, I'm not. I was so mad. I was so mad. Yeah, that part was pretty bad Friday.
For those of you who missed last week's show or haven't gotten a chance to listen to it or catch it yet, we were talking about the Texas youth prisons. The Texas Juvenile Justice Department was recently audited, for lack of a better word, a 4-year investigation by the U.S. Department of Justice. It included body cam footage, all kinds of footage, documents. They looked at everything. And then they had a board meeting, which was already its regular scheduled board meeting. And that's what Toonchi's referring to, the TJJD board meeting, where people can make public comment, just like a TDCJ board meeting. And they imagine saying, hey, I don't believe that the U.S. Department of Justice did a 4-year investigation. I just don't believe what they found was accurate.
Right. Like, especially on the heels of 6 people making pretty impactful comments. Alicia and Mandy and several other advocates with lived experience. And I brought the book. I take that book with me everywhere. Who Gets a Childhood by William Bush. I said this report is just the next chapter in this book. Like, you keep telling us that no, times are different. No, they're not. That report read just like 30 years ago when I was in the system. So it was hard. It was hard. We had to go. I had to go.
And I'm so sorry you experienced that. And that's one of the reasons we're talking about something a little bit lighter tonight, because there are so many experiences being incarcerated in Texas and being incarcerated as a women, and they're not all bad. Believe me, that the bad outweigh the good. I'm not recommending it, but we have good experiences. We do have joy inside, and we do have community. And I believe that you've told me you experienced some of that as a youth in the system as well, a sisterhood, and you all looked out for one another. And that's kind of what we're talking about tonight. It's a little bit lighter of a subject because we just don't want to be bringing people down all week, but we are still addressing the issues. We're still addressing the issues inside of the Texas Juvenile Justice Department. We have not let that go. Just because we're talking about something lighter this week does not mean that is not a huge priority.
Yeah.
So
won't let that go ever. Now we're reaching another phase of our advocacy with that. But I will tell you, I had to disengage. So me and Mandy took off to Houston and went to the horror movie convention that we go to every year. There were so many people. Marci, there was so many people you could barely move. And Mandy's young and beautiful and healthy, and she did not pick up any little bad germs. I did.
I know. I sent Tooch a message saying, honey, if you have to cough, please try to mute. But it's hard because she doesn't know that it's coming, right? And she's just not feeling well. So we're going to give you grace. I'm not picking on you.
That's a lie. Don't even sit here and tell me that outrageous lie. I want you to know that I'm sitting here sweating. I have a light fever.
Oh, goodness, not the fever. And what I want to know about for you all, our community here, Toonch is going to be getting all of these messages. People are going to be wanting to send her food. They're going to be checking on her for weeks because of this. Because of this one cold. Yeah, Jerry's talking about her friends that she made while she was incarcerated. Jerry Swaim is with us, and she did several years, decades inside of the Texas prison system. And she says, hey, her friends she made in there are still her friends. And we see y'all. And I see my auntie from Minnesota's on the show watching with us at the rec yard. Um, yeah, yeah. So but you had fun. The pictures looked great. You got
Yeah,
some
yeah.
autographs.
Yeah, I got an autograph from. I have to tell it because it was very sweet. Heather Langenkamp, who plays Nancy Thompson in the original Nightmare on Elm Street 1, 3, and A New Nightmare. Um, Underrated film, by the way. But anyway, I'm going to be real honest with y'all. I was shisty, Marcy. I pulled some ball headed hole games because when I got there, Mandy was still sleeping. But when I got there, the line to where the door opened was all the way past the elevator, almost outside. And I was like, I'm not doing this. So, you know what I did? I went right up to the front of the line and lingered around for the last 2 or 3 minutes before they opened the door, pretending I was throwing something in the trash. And I took off into the door. I did. I did.
That
Trifling.
was that was trifling.
It was, but I
Hey,
couldn't do it.
that'd caused a whole fight if we were still inside. That
Well,
reminds me of, on commissary day, how when you had the laws that would just come in and yell commissary, and you had to make the mad dash to the door in the first five, like five for commissary, the
yeah.
first five did it. And you would have that one chick that was just hanging out, all of a sudden interested in everything that was on the bulletin board. You ain't been at that bulletin board
You're
all
sitting there
week
looking at.
long. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden you're reading this memo verbatim
Yeah.
with your
Because you,
commissary bag under your arm. We see you.
well, I
And you
did it. And also, I hope Mandy doesn't get mad. I'm busting us both out, but we did it again for the panel because the panel of the Screen Queens was all the way down. And she said, honey, I'm glad I brought us over here. So when I did, because the line was just getting longer, I couldn't miss the panel like they were going to talk. You know what I mean? So we nestled up in the corner where the line
Oh,
kind of made a
Tooch.
corner. That way, when it came time, we just merged in. Hey, you got to make those skills work for you because Heather Langenkamp, she was the hot commodity, baby. And there was a line at her table. And I
And
didn't know. I was the
well,
third person.
I'm glad you got the autograph. I'm glad that you did that, and I'm sorry that you're sick, and I hope that you feel better. But I just wonder if karma is playing into that you cut in front of all those people.
No, honey, it's fine. I want to tell y'all what she said though. Went up
Okay.
to the table. I did kind of get, I did cry, and I told her I loved her, and that she was my first crush, and she taught me how to be brave as a little girl. And I said, "Well, on my picture, there's a line in A Nightmare on Elm Street when Johnny Depp says, why do you have this booby trap manual or whatever?" And she says, "I'm into survival." And I said, "Can you write that on the picture?" She goes, "You know what? How about I say we're into survival because we have to stick together." Oh my God, she was so precious. I just was. I did. I cried and told a stranger that I loved her. I did, and she was like, "How lovely."
I love you. How lovely.
How lovely. Thank you so much for being here. She was just so precious, not dismissive, really wonderful with her fans. So I had a good time. And
I'm
then I
glad
came back
you had a
sick.
good time. Yeah, yeah, and then you came home. I'm really glad that you had a good time. We had a good week as well. I did not make it to the TJJB board meeting. I just have too much travels to add any extra. I'm at the capacity for when and where I can be away from home for the next 2 months. But we did start school today.
Mm.
Yeah. We have a first grader in the house. And so we went to school, but I'll tell you what, we went to the school and so I pulled a bald-headed hoe gang too this morning. And so any parents or teachers at the elementary school where my little nephew goes, I apologize, but apparently you were supposed to pre-register if you want to walk your kiddo into school. And I didn't know. I hadn't a clue. And so we go and there's a huge line in front of the elementary school, and we're like, what is happening here? And we see this table. I don't even have my ID with me to go register late to walk this baby into first grade. And so I just I just said, his mom was with us, and I said, "Honey, we're fixing to own this. We're going into this school. Don't make eye contact." Well, you know how you do. You act like you're supposed to be there, like you know what's going on. And we went on and took that baby right on into the cafeteria because he wanted breakfast. He ate French toast for breakfast on his first day at school. And we headed back out. But when we headed out, there was another mother there that saw we didn't have the sticker approving us entrance, and she had got denied. She said, "How did you get in?" And I said, "Honey, we just owned it. We just went on in there." And she said, "I feel like I'm dropping my kid off at prison." And my
Oh God.
my little nephew's mama said she doesn't even know who she's talking
She
to.
doesn't even know what she's talking. God
But
bless.
yeah, yeah, so
But also
anyway,
too, mind your business,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Mind your
yeah,
business.
yeah, because that coulda got you caught up too if this really were prison, ma'am. Yeah.
You'd have been in
So
trouble.
anyways, it was really crazy. So we are talking about community behind bars, ways that women and everybody that is incarcerated survives, is we lean on the other incarcerated people around us, and we build communities. Women's prisons build play families. We have a sisterhood. We I mean, just any way that you can think of. In fact, probably I don't even know another time in my life where I have had that kind of community besides our organization out here, which is formerly incarcerated women. And yeah, so that's what we're getting into. We're diving into tonight. So you guys tell your stories in the chat of community. Talk, if you have questions for us about things that we did for each other. And I was trying to get ready for this show, thinking about how well, Toonch, you're sick. And so what would have happened if we were inside and
Well,
and
I can tell you, like I know well, Alexa cooked for me and made me hot toddies, right? Diane got me called all the way to the property room because she found some medicine and some V8 because we hadn't been to the store. And the property officer was cool with her, to make sure that I got it, right? Like we just, if you knew I was sick in a dorm by myself, and you already know I don't care for myself very well, what would you have done?
so if we did not live together, I would have probably sent some cough drops, and the mama bears in the penitentiary keep certain commissary items on hand for this reason. They're going to keep tea because the tea we got came in bags, so they're going to keep tea. They're going to, yeah, that's exactly. And they're going to keep cough drops, they're going to keep mint sticks, they're going to keep CTMs, which is like an allergy over the counter allergy pill. They're going to keep non-aspirins, which is the Tylenol, and they're going to have those on hand. And so I would have, if we didn't live together, I would have packed a sock, and I would have taken it out with me on the road with those things, and I would have passed it off to somebody in your dorm with a note, and we would be sending messages. That was another big thing. Messages. If we didn't live together, we we would, hey, you're in there with my sister so and so, tell her I said, hey, you're in K2, oh, my BF's in there, tell her I said I love her, tell her I said I love her, tell her I said I love her. And just that little, And it was almost when you came in from anywhere, if you had seen anybody, you would come in and make your little round around the dorm and, hey, Toonch, Alexa said she loves you. Hey, and we would just go on.
And she said that, like, she sent this over and she told me to make sure that I watched you take it because she knows you're not going to take it. So I have to watch you do it.
Yeah. 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 If you were in the dorm, I would have made you a hot toddy, a prison version of a hot toddy. And I've done a video on that because I think it was not last Thanksgiving, but the Thanksgiving before I had a cold and Brittany walked over with a hot toddy. She had made a hot toddy out here. So, a mint stick, y'all, is a peppermint stick. It's just a candy stick that's peppermint flavored. And the reason that those are really good, or what we did with them, is you would crush them up and put them in hot water so that they would melt. And when you have that blast of peppermint, it opens everything up. Uh, and again, I don't know if these are real. Like,
This is
I'm
what we
not
told ourselves what was
right.
supposed to work, right?
We are not medical professionals. We need to put that disclaimer right now. But the things that we did in there worked, and I think part of it was because so much care and how our brains kind of run our bodies, right? But you would melt a mint stick down, and then maybe you'd crush up the non-aspirins. Maybe you would melt a cough drop with it.
Oh, they're
Uh,
nasty. Those hot toddies were nasty, though, Marcy. This is
yeah.
why people would. You watch Jennifer drink this because I'm not going to drink it, right? Like, my hot toddies that I made for myself, nobody agreed with, but I'm telling you, they worked faster. Was I'd eat a jalapeno, and then remember that chili sauce that they started selling us? It was
Mm-hmm.
real spicy.
Sriracha.
Yeah,
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
I'd take that in a chili noodle packet and I would put it in hot water and I'd down it. I'd down it and, like, just all my sinuses would run. But those hot toddies, you girls be putting everything but the day room sink in it, and it just was real nasty. It was real nasty.
Well, see, I feel like, yeah, AIS is putting we're not getting sued today for giving medical advice because our partners got us. We are not medical professionals, but I love how Monique said, "Hey, messages and kites," because you're right. We were sending notes back and forth, and they would be sometimes on a strip of paper 4 inches by 1 inch. I mean, just tiny. And we would write super tiny, but because we needed it to get through a pat search, or we needed it to be easy to hand off where it couldn't be seen, because all of that's against the rules. Hey, everything we're talking about is against the rules. You're not supposed to
Yes,
care for anybody in prison. You're
right.
not supposed to build relationships.
What did they call it in Texas A&M research? They called it, like, the criminalization of care, right? Like any ways that we had to care for each other, that we had to really do when the guards weren't watching, right? Like, there was this real resistance for us to care for one another, and I think that the prison system now tries to pretend like they do a better job, like with life coaches and having some trained peer support. I don't want to call them specialists because I don't think they can get their certifications yet. But, like, oh, they've got ladies that sit with the women at the hospice at reception now, right? Like, yeah, but I mean, I think those things are programs and units like Mountain View. That is not happening at Lane Murray or Hobby or Crane. I promise to God, it's not happening. It's not. It's not.
Yeah. I I I mean, I'm not far enough removed from my time at Lane Murray and the women that are still incarcerated there. And thank you, Eric, for reminding me, and the trans men that are still incarcerated there as well, to to not be certain that they are still not allowing people to care for each other. And one of the things that I think about often when it comes to that kind of care, and the way that they stop or attempt to stop community and stop caring for one another, is we were not allowed to help persons with disabilities. We were not allowed to, if And I have this one image of one lady in my mind that every summer, for the summers that she was there, which was maybe 2, I don't know, but hundreds of days, I have the same memory of going to chow and seeing her. She didn't live in my dorm, but she was elderly and weak, and in the summer living in a 120-degree dorm, and then having to go to the chow hall in the direct sun. All of those things, she could not push herself in her wheelchair. She would just be moving inches at a time, and it would take her. We Her building was buildings away from the chow hall, and she would be down Main Street, and we weren't allowed to help her. Every now and then, an officer that just had not even compassion, but common sense. I mean, just, would say, hey, grab her and take her. And that officer would walk with us. But she was just out there. And I remember the first 20 times feeling this horrible, horrible feeling in my gut, in my heart. And then I remember that feeling just going away and going away. And by the 50th time I had seen her, it was just part of it. It was just part of it. I got used to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that's why, in other moments when we could intervene uh, more effectively without the staff seeing. I'm thinking about like the ladies that would fall out in the dorm, from seizures, or have some type of crisis, or um, it was always us on the floor with them, like making sure that they are not biting their tongue, like making sure that they have some type of uh, sense of safety until medical, and they're not that they're going to do a whole lot most of the time anyway, but it was always us looking after each other, and being able to, whether it was sickness or somebody's sad news or bad news, um, it was just instantaneous. And I'm not the most cuddle bug. I'm not, right? Like, but even in my ways, you know, it affected me, and I would do what I could in my capacity, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, um, yeah, we weren't allowed to hold doors open even for disabled persons. It was just a really strange dynamic to be a part of that, and to be in that environment, especially on the unit where I was. It was known as a medical unit. We had a pretty large elderly population, uh, and lots of folks on walkers and wheelchairs, and but we did sneak and help. Everything we did, we worked around all of that, and we still helped when we could, and I think that in many ways that environment can strip humanity away, but it was always just amazing to me how we were still able to, even in the midst of all of that, find each other and help each other. I remember one girl who she was like allergic to everything. This was at Plain State Jail. She was allergic. She ate a noodle every day. She went to store, bought noodles. Then we were only going to store once a month at that unit, and it was like lucky if you even got out. And she couldn't get out for store one time, and she can't hardly eat squat in the chow hall. Like, she's allergic to tomato sauce and all of these things that they use all the time in there. Peanut butter, just allergic to everything. And she didn't get out for store, and our dorm just came together and everybody threw in. Like, I remember a girl just walked around with the commissary bag. Hey, who has some extra noodles to spare? And everybody just threw in 3 or 4 noodles because that's all that girl could eat, and then she had her food for the month, and we did things like that, again, against the rules, but also the right thing to do.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about, it's not that we always got along, right? We did not. Right? Like, I see the dorm, the officers on the other side counting, and I can see it was a couple, and they were chasing each other around the dorm, right? Like, I'm gonna beat your ass, and everybody's like, ah, stop! Like, everybody's trying to intervene, right? Like, and it's this weird moment I have when I think about that. Like, yes, it was stressful and it was dysfunctional, right? But like, and we may not even have liked each other, right? But it's still this sense of we have to care for our own, even the people that we don't like here. It's still something gets some flip gets switched, that it doesn't matter that we don't get along. It doesn't matter that we've got beef from 5 years ago. And you're with my ex-girlfriend now, and you crossed me out of my job or whatever, right? There comes this moment that all we have is each other, in crisis situations, and even in good situations. Like, we talk about the holidays a lot. Like, some of my best memories, right? Because half my life was in prison, right? So I had to live where I was at. That's what my dad always told me. You have to live where you're at, Jennifer. And some of my best holiday memories, because I can't remember the ones with my family very well, are these really chaotic, fun, crazy, like very much family Christmases in the dorms that I was living in, like, and to be with people in there and then be out here with y'all, is it takes it to a whole nother level, right? It's a
Speaking
whole
of
nother
that, Toonch, speaking of being in prison with someone and then being here,
level.
Angela Thornton's on the rec yard tonight, and I
Oh
did time
boy.
with Angela at Lane Murray, and it's also, Diane was just telling you about Angela getting out, so,
Yeah.
she's friends with Diane too, and
Diane's gonna be so mad she wasn't here at the same time.
yeah. Yeah,
I'm so
yeah.
jealous.
So, hi, Angela, and welcome home. So glad to see you on this side of things for sure. And I just love this comment. John Lamberton's watching from Facebook, and he says, "You can't survive in prison unless you break the rules." And I've talked about that in some of my videos. Is even I might be a little bit. I'm a little bit of a disruptor. I'm not someone that keeps my mouth shut when I see things going wrong, or I think I'm fighting for the underdog. I've done that kind of my whole life, but so I broke lots of rules in prison. But even people going into the system with a 2-year sentence that are keeping their head down, staying in their cubicle, reading their book every day, they cannot survive prison without breaking a rule. You break a rule at some point. The rules are not, it's not reasonable. They're not reasonable to follow. It's not logical. They're not reasonable. They're not logical. There's lots of rules that, especially, and John, I know I'm always talking about men's prisons versus women's prisons, but the rules are made for men and not for women. So in a lot of ways, there are things that are just so absurd for us, uh, like the number of tampons we can have in our lockbox, when obviously we need more. So there are just lots of things, and you're right about that. And I didn't mean to cut you off, but I did want to shout out to Angela.
Oh, yes, I mean, I'm used to it. No, it's fine. Uh, do inmates get, COVID-19 shots?
That's
Yes.
Lee asking. Lee's watching on YouTube. And
Yes.
so I was incarcerated during COVID, and the way that when COVID broke out and the way that the shots started is they were free. They weren't any additional charge. If you don't have money for medical care and access to clean water, well, you're drinking the dirty water. Everybody, even if you had money on your books, was drinking dirty water in there and contaminated water, all of us. Um, but for the medical care, emergency care, you're still going to get if they deem it an emergency. That's really tricky. But the COVID-19 shots did not cost. And the way they started is they took like the most vulnerable group. So it was like elderly people that maybe had diabetes also. And I remember that the first time they offered it, they wanted to test you first. But remember when they first started testing you, they would just, that thing had to
Huge
go all the
all the
way
way up to
up
the
and
brain, yeah.
like, yeah. And people weren't, we were scared. We didn't know what was happening. We didn't trust medical. They, the medical care and staff had proven too many times to not be trustworthy. So lots of those ladies did not. And then from what I know, I got out in 2021. What we know through our organization and letters coming in and our communication with the people on the inside is then the units eventually opened up COVID shots for everyone. Now, visitation was completely shut down, and the way they kind of persuaded people to get their shot is if you get your COVID shot, you can start getting contact visits. And then like if the most a certain percentage of the unit got vaccinated, the whole unit would open up. And so I think that a lot of incarcerated people did end up getting their COVID vaccination because of that.
Yeah. Well, and I thought it was bullshit to you know convince people to do this, dangling their contact visits in front of them. Most people do anything. And I do believe, I don't know, they were doing it at Riverside. Were they enticing y'all with ice cream? Because they gave the girls ice cream for their shots.
Yes, I had forgotten about that. They did. It was they used to sell novelty ice creams. So it wasn't, they sold novelty ice creams, which was like a fudge bomb or like a bomb stick or a little frozen ice cream cone, one of those things. And they would, yeah, you would get a ticket for commissary to get a free one. Um, yeah. So,
God, there's a whole other discussion about how they treat us like children.
yeah.
But
Hey, ice cream was a big community thing. Commissary day, we had ice cream parties.
I mean, that's
Hey,
true.
if
That's
you
true.
bought somebody a pint of ice cream, that was an ultimate testament of your care for them.
Well, because it was expensive. It went
It
from
was
a dollar
expensive.
fifty when I first got locked up to $3 or $4.
Yeah, it was expensive, but we had you at Lane Murray, you could get 5 pints at a time. And so you would buy, or if you had a full spend, if you were busting your what do we call it? Busting your full
Bust
spend,
your spin.
bust your
Bust your
spin, full spend. If you were, that meant you were spending all the money you were allowed to spend at commissary that day. You got ice cream because there would be people in your dorm that had never hardly ever got ice cream. And so you would come back and sometimes I'd be on the first run and it'd be like 5 a.m. It's like 5 a.m. and I'm walking into the dorm with my commissary bags, put stuff under my bed, and I'm pulling out these pints of ice cream, 5 pints, and I'm walking around the dorm distributing ice cream. And that's the other thing we did. Like if Toonchi and I lived in the same dorm and she was going later, she I would get both of us an ice cream for the morning and then she would go in the afternoon and she'd
Now,
get both of us an ice cream in the afternoon.
now, if anybody here was living with me on store day, now store days were community day, right? Because everybody's happy. They're geeked out on sugar. We're sitting in the back eating ice cream, soda, chips. We're gorging. We are having a good time, right?
We've been out of coffee. Now we got coffee.
Got coffee. I even now, the video that Marcy posted of my pantry with my noodles and my tuna, honey, even when I got my stuff this week, I had to Instacart because I was so sick I couldn't leave and I had no food in the house. When I unpacked that with those noodles and with that fucking peanut butter, I felt like a millionaire. So you feel like you just have this feeling when everybody's gone to the store, you just feel replenished. You feel, I don't know, full and well. But I'm going to tell you something. Don't ask me to add something to the bottom of my list as I'm going out the door. Don't do it.
You
Don't
were
do it.
Don't ask Pappy.
I've already did my list. I've already calculated it out. Why didn't you ask me the night before? And people knew. They'd be like, oh, I don't want to ask you. I said, then don't. Can I get a bag of what were the chips?
Shebangs.
The shebang. Will you put a bag of shebangs up? Why didn't you ask me last night?
So, were you one of those that would work on their commissary list all day?
No, I just but when I did it, I
It
did
was
it.
done.
That's
It was
it.
done.
I've calculated, it's nice and neat. I'm not marking things. I'm not doing none of that because I'm just anal retentive like that. So, of course, though, if Belinda said, "Woody, put this on your list," well, then I hurried up and did
It was
it.
happening. And
That
so
part.
I was one of those that sometimes was still filling out my list as I was walking out
God,
the door.
how
So
did I
it wasn't,
know?
hey, it
How did
wasn't a
I know?
problem for me. If you needed something, I got you. And you can get me back when you go to store and it's all good. Lee's asking about mental illness. Do they get treated for mental illness? And if you're having suicidal thoughts, well, minimum care. And so I just want to, for example, like I'm on a unit with 1,200, 1,300 women. Frankly, if you're incarcerated, you need mental health care, period. Everybody, even the bare minimum, everybody needs it. But there are so many women there that it's crisis to crisis. So if someone is actively making moves to hurt themselves or others, that's crisis management. There's not much for preventative. There's just not enough staff
Mhm.
to do that. But that's another way that we took care of each other. We were each other's therapy. And the old schools that had been doing time for a while, they took the newer ones under their wing. They talked to them. They walked them through things. I remember and when I was first in the system, me being away from my kids, I'm now with older women that have been away from their kids for years and are talking to me about how to deal with it. I mean, Brittany and I worked on that because she was a child of an incarcerated mother, and I'm like, how do you know your mom still loves you while she was gone? And these kind of things. We were that for each other, and so again, we are not medical professionals or mental health care professionals by any means. We all have our own mental health issues, in fact, which frankly make us a little bit more knowledgeable than the average person. But we did that for each other.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to agree. Whether it was mental health or physical health, I mean, people came into the library, and I'm sure there was the folks on your unit too that, like, the person to go to for grievances, the person to go to for medical advice, right? Like, um, my girlfriend at the time would say, "I'm tired of people coming up to you wanting to show you their vagina." Because I was a peer health educator and I'm a bookworm, right? And I worked in the library, and I, you know, was able to get the librarian to order, more health books, more like lab report books. Like, so we had each other, like, oh, bring this to the library, let me look at it, let's talk over your lab reports, or, oh, go talk to Claire, she's a dentist. Like, we had to take care of each other. And when we were in crisis, and it can be hard, right? Like, you've got your own mental health stuff, but there is something really healing and restorative in a community, right? Like, truly, honestly, I say this all the time, is that I survived the youth prison, the adult system, from the girls and the women around me and my spiritual faith, right? That was it. That was it. That is the only way I survived any of that. I mean, my family's love, yes, of course. But those two things were, if you'd have taken those away from me, I wouldn't have made it. You may have even been able to take my spiritual faith. As long as I had my community with me, they acted as my faith. And that's been the thing that saved me out here, Marcy. And
Yes.
it's like, that's where the answer is always.
Yeah, I think so too. And same for me, 100% same. I had a very strong support system on the outside and lots of people caring about me, but none of them knew exactly what I was going through. And the people next to me, sleeping next to me on a metal bunk and here experiencing the same things. That's how I survived that, and that is honestly, yeah, 100%. 100%. I want to say, how many times did the officers tell you, or staff, prison staff, This is prison. You ain't got no friends. Like someone would get sick and be rushed to the emergency room, and you would 2 days later have not heard from her. You don't know what's going on with her. And you'd ask one of the officers, hey, do you know what happened with Spencer? And they're like, "What?" I'm like, well, that's my friend. You ain't got no friends. This is prison. Like,
I can't
or
even count how many times it's
yeah,
been said.
yeah.
You know, whether it's your friend or your girlfriend or, you know, and it, all the thousands of women that I met, you know, am I still friends with them today? No, but I'll tell you what, my closest friends out here were people that I did time with. The people
Mhm.
that I trust with my life and my finances and my health and my cat, they are people that I did time with.
Baby, I we went to Gatesville, Texas, which we did not talk about the vigil. Did that happen last that we talked about that last week. So we went to Gatesville, Texas. My friend from the Dr. Lane Murray unit, I handed her my debit card to pay for our meals because I had to go meet a reporter, and she lives in another town and left with that debit card. And I called her the next day. I was like, "Oh shoot, I think you have my debit card." And she looked, she's like, "I do. What do you want me to do?" And baby, somebody asked me, is it all right that she's got somebody today asked me, is it all right she's got your card? Girl, that I would give that girl my bank account, all that, all she would not touch it. I trust her. She did 33 years inside. I know her. I've slept next to her. I know exactly how she moves and operates. I know the people that I did time with better than I know anybody in the world besides my spouse or maybe my kids grow as they were growing up. But when you're living with people in that environment and you're seeing how they move in there, you know exactly what they're capable of and what they will do and what they won't do.
I mean, for sure, right? Like if I mean, honey, there's some of my family that I don't know them. I don't I'm calling you, or I'm calling Mandy or Lori or Diane. You know what I mean? Like Alexa. I remember when I think it was COVID. I was deathly ill when I lived in East Texas. And, you know, I told my parents, if you haven't heard from me, these are the people you need to contact because if they haven't heard from me at least once a day, something's wrong. And I was so sick, and Alexa and Diane were like, I hadn't heard from you. I was out. Girl,
Yeah.
it was terrible. And Alexa was so she lives, you know, it was about 3 hours from there, but and we hadn't been out long. We'd been out a year and a half. And she was so scared for me. She just jumped in the car, drove halfway there, had a flat blowout on the on the side of the road, and she's panicking like I'll figure out a way to get there. I'm like, no, I'm okay, I'm okay. Like there's like it just y'all are family. Like you know,
Yeah.
they say blood's thicker than water. I don't know if that's true. Maybe for me and my brother and my dad, but y'all are blood to me.
Yeah.
Y'all are family, straight up. You're not water. You're blood. As if we were. A lot of times, in order to survive, especially when I was younger, Marcy, I had this fantasy. I made myself believe that somehow I was just born at Riverside, that I was just an egg and I was just born there. And like all the people I was locked up with were my family, and the state itself was just like this entity that watched over us or something, right? I literally made myself feel that and believe that because I had been, you know, at such a young age taken away from my family. And when I would go to visitation, I would be with them. They're my family. But even over time, I started to feel very much like I don't I disconnected, right? Like, and so I I don't know. For me, it's always been about survival. Y'all were my family from the moment I stepped foot in there. That was the only way I was gonna make it. It's the only way I'm gonna make it out here, right? Because I'm not gonna. If you call me and tell me that something's happened, or Mandy or somebody, I, I'm just. It's different. It's just different.
Yeah. I already know, and I feel the same way, but I think that that happens out here. I mean, I think to a lot of survivor or trauma related groups that have survived things, they find that type of bond and that type of community. But I think that just surviving life, it requires a form of community for my personality, for sure. Deadeye Danny is watching from YouTube. We might have been talking about COVID when you wrote this, but I don't know what this question
I think
means.
it
How
was
much
about
contact?
contact visit.
Oh,
Contact visit just means you can sit at the table with each other. There ain't
right.
nothing more than that.
It's a hug
Right.
when you get there, and a hug when you leave, and that was it. So, um, yeah, and then I wanted to go down here. Angela Thornton says, "After being incarcerated for 28 years, I'm doing very good on the outside. 18 days after my release, I started working, going to church, learning technology, and my mind is set on making it out here, and I absolutely adore that. Thank you for sharing that, Angela. Someone had asked her about that. Lee is watching from YouTube, reminding us to hit that like button, share the live, comment, all of the good things that the algorithm loves, and we love that too. So thank you for that. Thank you for that reminder, Lee. We sure appreciate you. And that's what my auntie on here, Angela's telling you, like that's your sister, that people are worried about you, and they were worried about you because that's that is your sister. um and I love that. John Lamberton says, blood is not thicker. A person who has been through hell and still helps others is better. There is something about coming from in a place where you are completely oppressed in every way imaginable, and still having compassion and humanity for
Right.
everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and when you go through stuff with people, it's like a lot of times when I'm with y'all out here, whether it's, in a group or just hanging out one on one or something, I just, uh, yeah, y'all don't know what's going on in my mind when I'm looking at you. I'm just like, I can't believe it, right? Like, here we are, you know, with all of life's ups and downs, and outside life is, not a cupcake walk all the time, right? But like, we were in some. I think that we really felt that and talked about that, like during the hearing for the lawsuit, right?
Hmm.
Like, you can't. There's something deeply bonding about surviving something together, and it is. I'm telling you, y'all keep my mental health in there, right? Like in there and out here, it's like, girl, please don't do that, right? Like being able to talk each other off the ledge. Y'all can talk to me in a way that I hear that I won't hear from therapists. I won't hear from even my brother, who I adore more than anybody in the world. I won't hear it from anybody. But if I hear it, I remember. Do you remember this one time? And I'm gonna put it out there. I sure am. That I was really going through it when we first met, so to speak. And I was like, I feel I was in that very toxic, weird relationship that made me feel real boom, boom, BPD,
Hmm.
boom, boom. And I said, I think I'm losing my mind. I'm going to, maybe I should just check myself into a hospital. And you said, girl, don't do that. Don't do that. What are they going to do? And then we just talked about it. And I was
Hmm.
like, you're right. Like, I don't need that. You're like, no, you don't need that. Like, and then we just talked about the things that work for both of us because we're both very similar in our mental health, right? And you were like, I've done that before and it didn't do shit. Right? Like, I was
Yeah.
like, damn, you're right. And so it was like, there's,
And again, we are not medical or mental health professionals. And if you feel like you need to be hospitalized, we are not the people to give advice on that. Toons just happens to have we have been diagnosed with these same mental health
right.
disorders. We operate very similarly. So I can talk to her very candidly as a friend, again, not as a mental
Right.
health provider.
Well, and it's because you know what it's like to be impulsive, and you know what it's like. You knew where I was at, right? And if I'd have talked to some doctor, they would have taken it all the wrong way and all this other shit. But like,
You might have had handcuffs. Sometimes if we say what's going on in our mind,
we're finna get locked
we're
up.
gonna get locked up.
And,
And
and that was the point you were making with me. You were like, Jennifer, they're going to lock you up. You're going to be in a room again, and this is going to make it worse. They're going to lock. You already know how it is when you tell people how you feel in a certain way, and they're going to take it all kind of sideways. And I was like, damn, you're right, right. But I just needed to talk to somebody that understood.
how about religious figures in the penitentiary? And I'll start with what we did have a chaplain that was assigned to our unit, and they were in charge of all of the religion classes, and they handled all of that. And I had one. I never seeked counsel from religious figures. So maybe somebody in the chat can help. But there was one chaplain that we had while I was there that was approachable to me. Like going to the church house, she wasn't intimidating. She seemed approachable. She seemed like somebody but they're Christian. They're all Christian. So keep that in mind. If you're another religion, that might not be a comfortable for you. But they're in Texas. We're in Texas, baby. We're in the Bible Belt. All the chaplains are Christian. And again, they're in charge of the entire religion umbrella, but they're Christian. So but then we had one, and I'm going to put his name out there.
Do it.
Chaplain Matlock.
Mhm.
Chaplain Matlock. He was not approachable. He was rigid and sour and
Yeah.
policed us. Like we had enough prison staff. There were enough prison staff members telling us not to have our pants tucked, not to talk to somebody, not to wave at somebody in the window. We had enough prison staff to do that, but he policed us. So he was not approachable for that. And then let me add on to say is that there was always prison staff around. So any mental health care, any medical care, any counseling from even religious, there is prison staff in the room. They're there. So oftentimes the things that you need counsel about are in direct relation to the things you're experiencing from prison staff. So yeah, that's why we talk to each
And
other.
we talk to each other. It's not safe to talk to any of those people. It's not. Some are nicer than others, but at the end of the day, you're not, they don't understand. And quite frankly, you run the risk of somebody coming to lock you up, or write you a case for something you said. Like I can't think. Now I did go to Catholic mass, and we had a really good priest at the time, but and we had some good volunteers that were very kind, and they weren't like what I usually experienced with religious stuff in prison. But that's an anomaly. That doesn't happen very often. And really, you don't have time like to counsel and talk. And no, nobody, they don't have that type of time, even if they wanted to.
Right, one chaplain for 1,200 and something women for sure. Janice Johnson is tuned in to the Rec Yard from Facebook. She said she did time at Lane Murray, Hobby, and Hilltop and would not have made it without the friends God put in her life on each unit every step of my journey. And I think about that as well. Even in the beginning of my time, that I was only on that unit in Dayton, Texas at Plain State for 8 months, but I vividly remember the people in that dorm and my sister. I had a sister. We called each other sisters. We ate together. We looked out for each other. We slept right next to each other. And yeah, you're right. Every step of the way through the whole process, including county, my friends that I met in the county jail, and that was chaotic in and out. I
Yeah.
was in a minimum custody. So I'm there with people doing traffic violations or there for 3 nights because of a traffic ticket or something, and I'm going to prison. It was a really weird dynamic, but still in there. Yeah, there was community. So I appreciate that so much. Brandon Warren, shout out to Mr. Warren. Thank you for hopping on. Most of the time, the therapists or psychiatrists in prisons are just getting their supervisory hours, or they're new and don't know what the hell they're talking about. And then in your experience, and then you're thrown into this very vulnerable population on top of that, right? So, Toonch, we're at the top of our hour, honey. They're about to call rec.
They're
We're
about
about
to.
to
I'm going back into the dorm. I'm going straight to bed. I'll be awake for count time, but after that,
it's a
I'm
wrap.
knocked out. I'm taking those CTMs and that Benadryl that Alexa snuck in under her tongue. I'm taking Benadryl and I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I hope that you feel better. Thank
You
you
see,
for,
this is what I'm wiping my nose with.
I'm
This
sorry, that thin toilet paper, that one ply, baby, you look like you stole that out of the back of a rundown gas station and you purchased that. That toilet
it
paper is
was
rough.
4 rolls for like $2.
Yeah, and yeah, it's horrible. So thanks everybody for joining us. AIC advocate, thank you, thank you, thank you. Appreciate you for always reminding us to hit that like button, hit that save button, and then also, if you are listening wherever you hear your favorite podcast, we appreciate you leaving your reviews. Those mean so much to me. Tooch looks awful in the background. But yeah, we will be here same time, same place next Wednesday night, live on the Rec Yard Women's Prisons podcast. And we look forward to seeing you all there. It's our favorite night of the week.